Hey guys, Adele here, and it's Tuesday again. This week is a free topic week, so we get to do something a little unusual and fun. Um, so I'm going to talk about writing non-binary characters. Now, this is a topic that was suggested to me in the comments of my last video by Kawaii Star. Big thank you to you because I really need help with ideas sometimes. But I also feel like this is a topic relevant to myself and my knowledge because I am an aspiring writer. So, let's get right into this. Um, this is going to be a pretty long video, I feel like, because there's just a lot to explain. Writing any character is pretty difficult. So I'm first going to go through some steps for writing any non-binary character, and then because this is Diary of a Gender Fluid, I'm going to be talking about some specific difficulties that you may have when writing a gender fluid character. So, steps in creating a non-binary character. As far as in relation to their gender, the first step would be to figure out what their gender is. And I think that even if you have a pretty good knowledge about different genders, it would still be kind of cool to do some research and see what options are out there. Also, when choosing a gender for your character, I think it's important to remember that sometimes people are just questioning. Sometimes they don't know their specific feelings about their gender and how that relates to who they are. And so, just like people in real life sometimes are just questioning their gender and don't know anything for sure, that might be a good spot for your character as well. So, you decide what gender your character is going to be, and then, step 2, you want to choose some pronouns for them. Now, you can either go with what their assigned pronouns would be, so like he for people who are designated male, and she for people who are designated female. Or you could try and mix it up and use some different pronouns, like they, they, she. There's lots. You can go look that up and see all the different options that you have. And I think that at this point, as far as pronouns go, what they may choose to go by could possibly, well, not possibly, it's definitely going to be influenced by the world they live in. So if you're writing something like realistic fiction and you're setting it in the present day, a lot of non-binary people don't generally go by their preferred pronouns most of the time, just because people are still so unaccepting. So you kind of have to decide what your society is like that you're setting your character into and how accepting it is, because that's going to determine what their pronouns are. Like, if your character doesn't even know that there's other options besides male or female, they probably aren't going to go by a different pronoun than what they were assigned. Also, this kind of is gets a little sticky depending on whether or not you're writing a main character or a supporting character. A main character, you're probably gonna want to call them by their preferred pronouns, even if that's not what other people call them by, because they're a main character and you're getting in their head and you want to see their perspective, see how people are misgendering them. However, if they're a supporting character and your main characters only see them as a binary gender, that could be an interesting issue, but they're probably going to call them by either he or she. Okay, so you choose some pronouns, and then you get to decide how they present themselves, so gender presentation. And this is kind of similar to picking pronouns, because once again, it's determined on how accepting the society they live in is. So if you have a character who is designated male and they're living in a society like what we have today, it's not very accepting for people who are DMAB to wear more feminine clothing. And so if that's what your character wants to do, they might not do it because it can create a dangerous situation. Or they might choose a different outlet, like acting like a stereotypical gay man, in order to get that femininity out. So, as you can see, it's very similar to choosing pronouns because it's all determined on how accepting society is and accepting of their particular designated gender, because generally it's more okay for people who are designated female to wear male clothing. And so, yeah, that's kind of what gender presentation is about. It has a lot to do with clothing and appearance, like what length they like their hair to be and all of that. So, really, presentation is like a mix of what society determines is acceptable and what your character's personal choice is, and where those two intersect. So, you've chosen a gender for your character, you've chosen their pronouns, and you've chosen how they present. Now we have to get down to the real writing of them. And this is step 4, is getting to know your character as a real person. This is the most essential step of the entire process and is absolutely necessary before you begin writing them. The key to any good character is to create a full person. And that's exactly what I mean, a person. I feel like even when we're writing typical binary characters, we kind of sometimes, especially when we're amateurs and maybe when we're not so much amateurs, default to a stereotype because we feel like we can't relate to people who are a different gender than us. I feel like that's really what society teaches us, especially with male and female. They tell us that, oh, I can't understand women, I can just never figure them out, or it teaches us that males and females are completely different creatures, and that people who don't fall into those categories aren't even human. That's what society teaches us. And even if you believe something different, even if you're more accepting, it kind of wheedles into your brain, and you still, I feel like it's still daunting writing someone who's a different gender than you, because you don't want to mess it up, you don't want to make mistakes. But we're all people before we're different genders. Before I am a gender fluid, I am a person. And before whatever gender you are a person. So when writing your character, remember this and get to know them as a person, and that will help you write them in general. If you really feel like you don't want to make any mistakes, you could do some research. There are people out there who are willing to answer your questions. It's not the job of all of us non-cis people to educate you on what it's like to be us, but there are plenty of us who are willing to talk about it. Our group on Tumblr, diaryofagenderfluid.tumblr.com, is a really great place to ask about what it's like to be gender fluid, because we're there specifically to help you understand. And there's other groups out there like that for other genders. So if you really need some help on a situation, I would go straight to the people who experience that and ask them. But also keep in mind that we're not all going to have the same responses, because before we're gender fluid, we're people. So, those are the basic steps for writing any non-binary character. However, writing gender fluid people becomes even more challenging. So, giving your character pronouns that aren't conventional is already going to create some difficulties, because in writing, when someone is reading, they can go straight back and say, hey, did I read that right? What are they calling this person? While in in real life, when you're speaking, you can't rewind to see what the other person has said. You can't rewind to see, oh, what are they calling this person? What are these pronouns? And so that's already difficult. And the difficulty increases when sometimes gender fluid people use multiple pronouns depending on what gender they are. And that can get really sticky, even in real life. Not all of us choose to do that, but I know that if it was more acceptable, I would. I guess that a lot of us might do that if it was more acceptable. And so, especially when you have a main character, you want to stay true to their feelings and write how they feel. And that might come off as a little strange because it's different, because no one else does that. So it's difficult writing gender fluid characters because sometimes we have different pronouns. And it gets even more sticky because sometimes we go by different names too. And, well, it's really confusing, even in real life. And it's not belittling or invalid to portray that confusion, because this is something that a lot of people don't even talk about their experiences with. And so if we have no frame of reference for who we are in real life, it's accurate to talk about how confusing that would be in your writing. Also, the biggest thing about being gender fluid is you experience different genders. Yay! Woo! And so, that's gonna be, you might want to talk to some gender fluid people, and I recommend getting multiple stances on this. How they know they're a different gender, how often their gender changes. For some of us, it's more than once a day. For other people, it's every couple months. And so, you kind of got to decide what sort of gender fluid person your character is, and how much their gender influences their lives. Because sometimes, you suppress it and you don't really let yourself experience it to the full. And sometimes you experience it so much that you just can't get it out of your head, and it does become a really big part of your life. When writing anyone who isn't cis into a story, I feel like it's really difficult to make the story not center around the fact that their gender is different. And so you kind of gotta find a balance. I feel like we do need stories about specifically gender fluid narratives, but we also need stories where it's not treated as a special case, where it's not all about your gender. And yet, gender infiltrates even the tiniest interactions of our lives. It determines how we dress and the way other people treat us and our success in life. And so you kind of have to find this balance where people, you have to find a balance between it not being all the book is about, all your story is about, and not dumbing it down so much that it isn't an important factor in your character's life. There's a lot of challenges in writing non-binary characters, and I am certain that I haven't touched on all of them, because I could have said so much more in this video, and I could go on for hours and hours talking about tinier, even smaller points that are in no way less significant and less important when writing your character, but we don't have time for all of that. So it's a pretty daunting task to write about people like us, but we really need you to do it. Even if you get it wrong, representation is so important. Just getting that term out there so that people can at least start to understand. I mean, we don't want you to write us in a degrading way, but if you're genuinely trying and focusing on the fact that we're people, then you're gonna do well, you know? We really need that from you. And good luck, you know? You're doing something that's awesome. Okay. So, yeah, that's kind of my crash course tutorial on writing non-binary characters. If you have any specific questions, like super specific questions, feel free to ask them in the comments. I'm always happy to talk to you guys. I may not be on our Tumblr to talk to you, but, you know, in the comments, I'm always super happy to help. And we'll see you guys next week. Okay, bye-bye.